Hello, New Paltz. Welcome to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'm here every Friday at 2 p.m. talking movies, new reviews, recommendations, lists. I just love movies, and that's what I do here. On today's show, I'm going to review Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie, Bugonia, give a 3-movie highlight on 3 of Yorgos Lanthimos' past movies I've watched recently, and close out the show with my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. I'll be right back with my review for Bugonia, but first here's some movie music, starting with Harry's Wondrous World by John Williams from the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone score. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Kicking off the show today, Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie Bugonia hit theaters last weekend. Starring Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, it follows 2 conspiracy-obsessed young men who kidnap the high-powered CEO of a major company, convinced that she is an alien intent on destroying planet Earth. I had never seen any of Yorgos Lanthimos' past movies before this week. I had heard of Poor Things a few years ago with all the acclaim it was getting, but I never ended up actually seeing it, and I've heard of ones over the years, but this movie sounded pretty interesting to me. It's based off a 2003 South Korean film called Save the Green Planet, directed by Jang Joon-hwan. The idea of this conspiracy theory idea mixed with a kidnapping thriller got me interested hearing what it was about, and then watching some of Yorgos' past movies over the last week, seeing how strange and wild and unique his movies are, I was very curious about this movie. I didn't love the 3 other movies of his I watched, which we'll talk about later in the show, but nevertheless, it's worth seeing what he cooks up every time something of his comes out, where he takes his stories and themes. You kind of want to go in with as little details as possible, and that's what I did with Bugonia. And Bugonia is another wild film from Lanthimos, featuring 2 all-star performances from Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone, a tense thriller, a fascinating exploration of themes, but some choices in the final minutes went too far for me in the weirdness and hurt some of the earlier parts of the story for me. So when it comes to just the setup of this movie, the kidnapping of this CEO, played by Emma Stone, and this whole hostage situation involving this alien conspiracy theory, it was one of the most immediately engaging and compelling plots of one of Lanthimos' movies for me. Some of the other movies I've seen of his, like Dogtooth and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, explore some interesting themes and have a lot to say, but the stories themselves aren't the most engaging in terms of the plot for me, especially earlier on in those movies. Bugonia really gets moving. You meet the characters, learn some of their ways of thinking, their ideology, the basics of their plan and their motivations, and then the plot gets set off. And again, Yorgos is so unpredictable, and with these out there beliefs of Jesse Plemons' character and how much he believes in this plan he's doing, you really feel the tension of this dangerously passionate guy and the potential destruction and violence this could all be leading to. As you're watching them go along with this plan, how convinced they are in what they're doing, how they can't be really reasoned with, it really feels so pressing and threatening. And after watching some of Yorgos' other movies, it's really great how many genres and types of films he tackles. His strange style is on display, but this story is so different from what I've seen of his so far. Each of these movies feels like a different experience. The structure of the stories, the characters, the settings, the themes they tackle, and I really appreciate that about his movies. And when it comes to this movie, there's a strong emphasis on dialogue to progress the story and explore the themes. As this hostage situation is going down, the dialogue between Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons really allows you to understand these characters and their worldviews. One of the biggest themes this movie is tackling is the idea of how these messages on the internet and these theories being spread can appeal to people who were hurt by this system, big corporations, and feel suppressed. Things like podcasts promoting these ideas, the way they appeal to people dealing with a tragedy and who are looking for a way to come up with an explanation and fight something. Jesse Plemons is so good at playing this guy. You see his struggle and how fed up he is with this system, with some injustices that have gone down in his life, and how this has all influenced him to just say forget it and forget following the rules, and he resorts to violence. And you do feel for him, even as his response to what he's experienced is so messed up and wrong. and just not the right way to handle things. Plemons does such an amazing job bringing the anger and the sadness of this character that fuels him on every step of this plan he's going along with. And with Emma Stone's character, you really get some of the themes of capitalism and greed's effects on everyday people, how their actions lead to terrible things for people that they don't really face enough punishment for. Emma Stone is just fantastic here. Her character's role in the story of being this CEO whose company has done some really bad stuff, but her being kidnapped in this fashion is not the appropriate response. And seeing how she navigates this situation with Jesse Plemons' character, the way she communicates with him, and how she tries to appeal and reason with him, there's a lot of layers to her performance in every scene with this frustration and attempts at reasoning, as well as these discussions on her role in all this whole situation, what's happened in the past, the attempts at her justifying it. Emma Stone is just so dynamic and complex, and just perfects every aspect of this character. This movie has a lot of great dialogue, but when it comes to the more action side of things, that really excels as well. There's some tense moments in these situations, different complexities and dynamics going on that start to build on each other. There's some really, really shocking moments that are genuinely some of the most flat-out surprising moments I've had in a movie theater this year. This movie is messed up, it does not play nice, and with the themes it's dealing with, I think that was for the best at making it effective in what it's exploring. These shocking scenes feel really in line with the story and the themes. Yorgos has some weird stuff in all the movies I've seen of his, but I would say for most of the time it's for some effect or purpose. It's not just crazy for the sake of it. There's a deeper meaning that he's communicating with the craziness, and I would say that holds true in Bugonia for sure. How these events tie into the themes of the dangers of conspiracy theories, how people are drawn to them, and the dangers of capitalism and greed. There's some really, really sad stuff here. How this all came to be is so unfortunate, and I really got invested in the characters, and the movie really makes you feel how just no one wins here, how all that has gone down has hurt these people so much, and it's a movie that will make you feel the frustration in all of this. And the message of the power of unity and how harmful divisions are in society also goes a long way to highlight the sadness in all this. You don't just see what's wrong with the system, you see the power in what is lost by all the ways people take advantage of each other and how bad the responses are. It's just really, really sad to see. And the camera work and cinematography is also really interesting here. The darkness and shadowiness of this basement setting really captures the bleakness and darkness of this whole situation. Some of the more action shots are really dynamic here too, and I love the way Yorgos will be head-on with a character going towards the camera. It's a cool technique he's done in some of his other movies. It really captures the urgency and makes you feel connected to the scene so well. The brightness of some of these scenes, showing some of the potential promise of humanity and how bright and colorful they are, also capture that energy so well. The beauty in it that contrasts so strongly with the darkness of what's going on in the story. It really handles the theme so well with the cinematography as well. My biggest issue with this movie is the ending. Without spoiling it, I think it goes too far. The weirdness reaches a point that I didn't feel engaged in. And I think what it means hurts some of the early parts of the story for me. It's hard to talk about while being so vague. I really don't want to spoil any of it here. But I think it makes a jump that lost me in the weirdness. I also think with some of the earlier parts of the story, some of the themes it's tackling, it wasn't really necessary, and what it does made some parts of the movie weaker for me, honestly, the more I thought about it. But overall, I wasn't sure what I was going to get with Bugonia. That's one of the most interesting parts of Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography I've seen so far. How different each of his movies are, and how differently they appeal to me individually. Yorgos has a very strange style, but I think he communicates his themes very effectively, and there's a lot of depth in his stories. And Bugonia is one of my favorites of his so far. I really got invested in the kidnapping thriller aspect of it. Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone are spectacular and bring all the necessary complexity to their characters, and the themes it's tackling, the dynamics between the characters, it's very relevant to today's world, and really, really sad at points as well. It's bold, it's shocking, but it really makes you feel the importance of the message and how bad things can get in these divisions. The ending didn't really work for me in the weirdness or how it fits into the rest of the movie, but there's so much to this movie I got really engaged in, really made me think. If you're looking for something different at the movies that is relevant in today's world, with some powerhouse performances, give Bugonia a try. I give it an 84 out of 100. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Becoming Spider-Man by James Horner from the Amazing Spider-Man score. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Next up today, I'm going to do a little 3-movie highlight on 3 of Yorgos Lanthimos' past movies I watched for the first time recently. Like I did with Paul Thomas Anderson a few weeks ago when One Battle After Another came out, I wanted to take a director that is new to me, that I've heard is really talented and interesting, and do a dive into a few of their past films as their next movie is about to release. The 3 movies I watched this week were Dogtooth, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and The Favorite. So, getting into this, the first movie I watched was 2009's Dogtooth. A controlling, manipulative father locks his 3 adult offspring in a state of perpetual childhood by keeping them prisoner within the sprawling family compound. This is one of his earlier movies that I heard good things about that sounded really fascinating to me. This is a very strange movie, but like I would say with most of the movies I watched of his so far, it uses the strangeness in some way to communicate its themes, and I do appreciate that it's not style for the sake of style. There's an artistic purpose for it, and Dogtooth does that very well. The themes of this movie are certainly based around control and subversion and concealment of reality and the truth. The movie follows a few days in the life in this compound with this very odd and messed up family. It really builds out so many areas in this place of how the parenting works, how the children interact with each other, what the rules are, what goes on here, and it's some really sickening stuff. There's so many powerful showcases of how the father uses the naivety of the kids to just fill their heads with whatever he wants them to believe. Their world is these walls, their beliefs and perception of reality are up to him, and it's just horrible to watch just such abuse taking place. There's this weird reward system with stickers he has with them to keep them controlled and obedient, a lot of the indoctrination stuff, and just straight up lying to them about language, what things are, just such simple stuff in language and reality that you just know and understand from a very young age, and seeing how this is kept from these kids and how the world is warped for them is honestly terrifying, and how this is portrayed is so effective as well. It's so subtle, like you'll have him just lie to one of them, and they'll be like, oh, okay, cool. They don't know any better, so that lie is just allowed to take hold, become truth, become reality to them. Just the casualness of how lying takes place in this house and how normalized it is here just speaks volumes to how horrible this whole thing is. This is obviously a very extreme scenario in terms of this family structure, with how these kids are being kept, but it's one that is very relevant to this idea of childhood indoctrination, to the ways control takes place, with this emphasis on competition, rewards, the way you see its potential power as it is being done to like 30-year-olds, and how it still holds true even in this older age, is just really powerful. The performances are all great and show this like childhood-like nature of all the kids, how they were never allowed to develop and experience the world, just being kept in this immature state. It also deals with ideas of the power of the truth and how it can change someone that I think is handled very strongly here. The ending really worked for me as well, and the final shot alone has so much to it that you can dissect and talk about. Now, as for my enjoyment, this movie made me very uncomfortable honestly watching it, which I think is appropriate, but it was certainly hard to watch for me. There's a lot of nudity, and how awkward some of these scenes are, how long they go on for, just really weirded me out. I think for the most part that is how you're supposed to feel, and how just unnatural and awkward this whole thing is. Although there are some very, very long scenes that begin to feel like they drag on too much and begin to feel very monotonous. The lack of music also contributes to that, which is very effective at really putting you in these scenes, making the sickness of what's happening, how unnatural it is, stand alone without even music to kind of break it up for you. It's all very effective, but this movie was very unpleasant for me to watch because of that. It's very well done, the themes are very interesting, but watching it was something personally I did not enjoy. Although I think it's good and I give it a positive score, just comes down to preference at that point. It was pretty uncomfortable to watch, and I just probably will not rewatch this anytime soon. The second Yorgos Lanthimos movie I watched this week is 2017's The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Stephen, a charismatic surgeon, is forced to make an unthinkable sacrifice after his life starts to fall apart when the behavior of a teenage boy he has taken under his wing turns sinister. This is definitely my least favorite of Yorgos' movies I've watched so far. I did not care for this one. The themes here deal with childhood trauma, responsibility, and revenge. The standout performance for me was Barry Keoghan as this child who forms this attachment to Colin Farrell's character that gets darker and darker as the story goes along. The creepiness and subtle anger and vengeance he shows really makes him unsettling. I thought Keoghan made that part of the character really effective. The camera work and cinematography are great here. The camera movements are so cool, the mix of wide shots, some really high angle shots that make things really unsettling. It's a really visually interesting movie for sure. Where it goes towards the end and how it resolves really gets sickening, and I did get pretty engaged towards the end in seeing how this whole thing wraps up, how sinister it gets. The issue for me comes from a severe lack of engagement for most of the movie, particularly with the characters. Barry Keoghan's performance is very stiff, and how the character talks and the dialogue gives him a creepiness and unpredictability that you would want from this story. The problem is that every character talks like him. Every character has this extremely unnatural, robotic nature to their performances, and the dialogue being so matter-of-fact and monotone, not a single character in this movie feels like a real person or talks like someone you would know in real life, and it really makes every conversation and relationship feel inauthentic. And with how much of this movie is about the characters, that was a huge problem for me in terms of getting invested in the story. And it's one of the only strange choices by Yorgos that I don't see the creative purpose for. He has some weird stuff in his movies, but most of the time it holds a purpose. Having the characters be so lifeless and stiff just didn't make sense to me, and it certainly made the movie worse for me. The awkward nature of the characters in Dogtooth, for example, worked because the characters were raised to not mature as the age, so it's adults acting childlike, and that communicates the themes really strongly. But here the character's behavior just didn't make sense to me. I suppose it's to emphasize how crazy this all is, and it is a weird concept with where it all goes, but this story is potentially very gripping. The idea of a childhood loss, this blame being assigned that threatens this family, it's really interesting stuff that has potential for extremely interesting characters. Where the story goes and some of the unexplained elements of the story didn't even really bother me there. I was fine with most of the strange story elements. It's a very emotionally fueled idea for a story, with characters that show almost no emotion. So this cast is good, the story and resolution as an idea worked for me, and I appreciated how dark and sinister it got, but too much of the engagement hinged on the characters for me, and I just felt nothing there. I just didn't like this one. The third Yorgos Lanthimos movie I watched this week was 2018's The Favourite. In early 18th century England, the status quo at the court is upset when a new servant arrives and endears herself to a frail Queen Anne. I'm going to do a switch up from all that negativity. I really like this movie. This is probably the story I like the most of all his movies so far. It's this kind of competition for the most trusted spot on the Queen's side between Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz's characters. The power dynamics between the royal and servant classes of this time period in England play a big role in the story here. You see this kind of mentorship relationship between the two that grows in jealousy and hatred that ties into the different backgrounds of their characters, their past relationships, their goals, and it becomes this game of manipulation and deception that is really tense and engaging. It's certainly a character study on how power works in relationships, the pursuit of it, how it can be manipulated, and how relationships work in this setting where so much power hangs in the balance. The politics of England at this time, with this war in France going on, creates a backdrop with a lot of turmoil, a lot of people with different political goals and ways they want to handle the war. Nicholas Hoult is awesome here as this very nasty and unlikable guy that is playing his game of manipulations and using people to get his goals. The main trio of Emma Stone, Rachel Weisz, and Olivia Colman is incredible. The relationships among all three of them are so complex, and develops so much in the story in really interesting ways. You feel the history between Weiss and Coleman and how much Emma Stone's character showing up throws things off. The way characters lie, manipulate, how emotions are toyed with. It's such a great political, historical drama and a great character drama between these three women. Emma Stone plays this kind of innocent facade so well on her journey and showing her corruption growing. Weiss's anger at her relationship being threatened and changed to status and what Emma Stone's character represents in this whole situation is so powerful. And Olivia Colman as Queen Anne is magnificent, showing the sadness of this character, the struggle she's going through in her old age, and dealing with these relationships, who she can trust, all these politics going on. You really get engaged in her performance. Olivia Colman is so electric here, it's amazing. And the sets, the costumes, and production design are amazing, bringing this time period to life with these palace and court sets, the dresses, the wigs, the makeup. It's such a detailed setting that fully immerses you in this time 200 years ago. It's so convincing, you just feel like you're in this place the whole movie. The cinematography is gorgeous, the camera work makes everything feel so grand and expansive. It's definitely a story that's a lot about the characters, but this time period too is so grand and big, and you feel that as well. You feel the largeness, but when it comes down to the characters' relationships, you feel the impact of that too. And overall, this movie is my favorite of Yorgos' movies I've watched so far. The story and characters, this whole plot and the complexity of the world and the relationships and how they evolve just really sucked me in so much. It's a beautifully produced and shot movie, some incredible performances. It's the one I am most likely to rewatch, and once again, it's such a different movie from the other three we've talked about in its setting and its story structure, but still has his talent on display, still tackles interesting themes in really compelling ways, and I just really felt more invested in everything in this story and this movie than some of the other movies I've watched of his. And overall, I'm glad to be getting more into Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography. These aren't movies I'm super interested in rewatching or that would become like a personal favorite of mine. Some of his strangeness certainly becomes really unpleasant to me, even when it's used well to explore themes and drive the story. It's pretty disturbing and I don't enjoy watching it most of the time. But he's so talented, so diverse in what he does. I'm very interested in what he does next, as well as getting around to watching the rest of his movies. I'll be right back on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale, but first here's some more movie music, starting with the James Bond theme by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. Welcome back to Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. Closing out the show today, I'm going to give you my 3 throwback recommendations for this week. Every week, I like to take 3 movies I like to recommend and give a little recommendation on them here. My first throwback recommendation for this week is 1994's True Lies. Directed by James Cameron, it follows Arnold Schwarzenegger as a fearless, globe-trotting, terrorist-battling secret agent who has his life turned upside down when he discovers his wife, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, might be having an affair with a used car salesman while terrorists smuggle nuclear warheads into the United States. This movie is a tremendously fun mix of a spy movie with this kind of family relationship drama. There's plenty of classic spy elements here that, as a fan of the genre, I found so enjoyable. This secret agency and building out the world and characters there, this idea of a secret agent who is also a family man but must keep the true nature of his job a secret from his family, that part of the story with his wife and daughter, and the drama that builds from him not being able to explain his absences and them feeling neglected is what allows it to mix the genres so well. The movie throws you into this spy world, with these undercover missions being covert, using lots of gadgets and espionage tactics. It's immediately exciting, and watching it, I could tell this would be something I'd be into right away. But then you get into the family side of things, and it makes things even better. The movie can be very silly, very fictionalized with the spy world, but this idea of secrecy gives it more depth. You really have 2 big parts of the story that build closer and closer together in a really clever script. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis are so awesome here. Arnold is amazing as an action star, of course. His personality, his confidence and charm, his physique, he just becomes this secret agent going around saving the world. You just see him on that poster grinning with the gun in his hand, and you see how exciting he makes this movie, how much fun he is. and just an incredible leading movie star. And Jamie Lee Curtis as his wife is so great as well. Her struggle with feeling kind of bored and neglected draws you in, and the adventure that occurs, where their relationship goes, it really satisfies the character arc so well, meshes the two sides of the story, and in these action sequences with the two of them, there's such great tension, the way they work together and have to navigate this all and repair their relationship. It's so thrilling, and the way the whole script flows between every sequence is so amazing and exciting. James Cameron's action, of course, is awesome as well. There's so many great chases across buildings that have some silly imagery and elements, but also have the grit and authentic stunt work of some great 90s action movies. The shootouts with the gunfire sound effects and battling all these terrorists are also exhilarating, and the balance of all this action with chases, with shootouts, stealth sequences, with gadgets, it's all so diverse and fantastic. The cinematography also really shines as well, especially in some of these nighttime scenes in the city, and some of the action that takes place there with the lights from the streets and these buildings. The darkness amplifies the tension in these scenes, but it's also really visually pleasing. Overall, True Lies is up there with me for some of James Cameron's best. This script gets so much in there with the family drama, the spy world and story. It is so much fun. Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis are amazing. The action and cinematography is thrilling. It's just a blast of a movie. My second throwback recommendation for this week is 2013's Bad Words. Directed by Jason Bateman, it stars Jason Bateman as a spelling bee loser who sets out to exact revenge by finding a loophole and attempting to win as an adult. This movie is so funny. It is so nasty. It follows Jason Bateman into this world of spelling bees as he angers the parents, angers the administration of the competition. He is so incredibly petty and bitter as he's trying to right a wrong from his childhood and just pushing through everyone to get there. I would guess this is probably the most toxic and vulgar movie set within the world of children's spelling bees. The humor is so insane. Jason Bateman's straight man delivery and ability to convincingly play this very rude, annoyed guy just makes everything so funny. The spelling bee scenes and all the craziness that goes down there and his super seriousness while competing with these kids is just tremendous. There's so many just crazy lines he has, strategies he uses in these competitions that is so messed up and dark, and Jason Bateman does that humor so well here. There's this weird friendship he forms with this kid he's competing with that is also so crazy. There's this kind of arc of him helping the kid have a little more fun outside the competition and his academics, and where that all goes is so problematic but also really funny. It's the kind of thing that's really funny in this comedy world, but just so awful in real life that it kind of just happens in this super dark movie that it's set in, but their interactions are so funny. If you like a messed up, vulgar comedy, if you like Jason Bateman, this one is just really something. It's got a strange friendship arc, a brutal competition, and this very funny, super serious attitude in a very harmless setting, like a children's spelling bee, that just makes this movie so wild. But give it a watch if it sounds like something you'd enjoy. I think it's very funny, and I don't hear about it a lot in terms of just comedies, especially recently, so I thought I'd bring it to your attention here. My third throwback recommendation for this week is Brawl in Cell Block 99. Directed by S. Craig Zahler, a former boxer turned drug runner, played by Vince Vaughn, lands in a prison battleground after a drug deal gets deadly. Bad Words is a messed up comedy, so I'll throw a messed up crime movie in here too. This movie is brutal. It's one I watched for the first time recently, and I think it's really good, but it's also pretty depressing to watch. Vince Vaughn's character ends up in this terrible situation in this prison, and how he has to get deeper and deeper into the horrors there just makes you feel like you're following this guy into a pit of darkness. All the choices he's made leading him to this point, it all feels so desolate. It's a really gripping crime story. The villains are so incredibly evil, and the ways they threaten and use Vince Vaughn's character, how the characters are being motivated, and the methods they use to make all this happen is just sickening. And the movie, with its acting and atmosphere, just creates this feeling so well. There's some scenes you watch, and you see what happens, and what actions are taken, what threats are made, and you just start tensing up in your seat at this whole thing, how evil these people are, how messed up this whole situation is. Vaughn is great. He's so physically imposing, so brutal. but has moments to show some emotion in the story as well in terms of sadness. Don Johnson plays a warden, and is a great example of how this whole prison system Vaughn's character is caught up in just has monsters all over the place, on both sides of the law. There's very little room for hope. You just feel this battle he's going through, and you can't breathe until it's over. The set designs of these prisons, how dirty, how claustrophobic they look, how certain parts of them look like straight up torture dungeons. There are awful people everywhere. No one is looking out for you. And this danger is brought to life so well, it's just insane. This movie is incredibly violent. The blood and gore is extremely graphic. The sound effects, too, of this impact, and oftentimes, like, compression of people's heads and things like that, it's just such a display of brutality. But it's not just all-out violence. The crime story is strong. It's tense. It's scary. You feel the pressing nature of everything and how bad of a situation Vince Vaughn's character gets into. If you like really dark, violent crime movies, this one is really good. The performances are strong, the way it builds this bleak atmosphere, these violent sequences with this crime story, these terrible villains, these just depressing, scary prison settings. It's very upsetting. If you don't do well with violence, this one is a lot. But if it's your kind of movie, give it a try. So this week, if you want a lighter action movie with some comedy, watch True Lies. It is a very fun James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. If you want a nastier comedy, watch Bad Words. It's a very underrated and not talked about enough Jason Bateman comedy. And if you want a dark, bleak, and violent crime movie, watch Brawl in Cell Block 99. Vince Vaughn is tremendous. The world is just terrifying in that movie, all that goes down. It is truly something in the crime genre. I'll be right back to close out the show, but first here's some more movie music, starting with Escape from the Chateau by Shirley Walker from the True Lies score. That's going to be it for me this week on Not Quite My Tempo with Chris on WFNP Rosendale. I'll be back next Friday at 2 p.m. with reviews for Predator Badlands and Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, a ranking of the Predator franchise, and some other movie talk. But until then, have a great week.